Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're undertaking an exploration into some pretty intense personal and psychological terrain.
We're talking about the nature of unresolved intimacy, longing, and what happens when we mistake revelation for destiny.
And to do that, we're diving deep into the core, often uncomfortable, questions from KJ's new book, Finding Noir.
And this book, it isn't a traditional romance or a self-help guide. It's more of an interrogation of modern connection.
Right, and all the myths we use to kind of protect ourselves. Our mission today is to really unpack the central ideas of this work, which, by the way, is available now on Amazon Kindle.
Yeah, and figure out what it means to look at love not as a comfort, but as a disruptive force.
And that disruption, that's the hook, isn't it? That's the starting point.
It is exactly the starting point. The book grounds itself in an incredibly familiar but also just devastating emotional moment. It's that quiet internal realization when you've been investing in something and you just know.
Yeah.
You know that nothing was going to happen.
That phrase is it's brutal because it bypasses all the drama.
Right.
It's not the big goodbye. It's that slow, quiet violence of unanswered messages, right? That feeling of being chosen in private, but just abandoned in reality.
Yeah.
We all know that state of mind, where you just endlessly replay every sentence, every pause, every single almost.
It's the moment the body knows the truth before the mind can really accept it. And that feeling is the entry point for the whole book's premise.
Yeah.
Love, in this context, it isn't a stabilizing agent.
Yeah.
It's a catalyst. It's designed to change you.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because once that painful realization hits, the internal interrogation starts immediately. And the question that just launches us into that spiral of self-doubt is always the same one. What could I have done differently?
And what's so fascinating here is how the book frames the danger of that specific question. It calls it seductive.
Seductive, how so?
Because it implies control. If we can find a flaw in our strategy, the pain suddenly has a structure. The loss becomes manageable.
Right. We tell ourselves, if I had just behaved differently, then the outcome would shift.
Exactly. We start to micromanage our replies, we calculate distance, we try to optimize our suffering.
Yeah, if only I'd been softer or braver or maybe less available or more intense. We're treating the whole thing like a chessboard, not a collision.
That's it. And that's the fundamental critique the book offers. This whole mindset suggests that the failure was one of execution.
Like if I'd just changed my tactics.
Right. If you just stopped editing yourself for an outcome that, let's be honest, was probably never available in the first place.
Okay, I see the intellectual argument, but I want to push back on that a little bit.
Please.
Because if the book is saying the outcome was never available, why is the most shocking truth it delivers this? Sometimes the only thing you could have done differently was leave the story earlier, before it taught you everything it came to teach.
That's a powerful point. Isn't leaving earlier a form of intellectualizing the pain? You're avoiding the revelation, right?
Precisely. If I stay long enough to learn the hard lesson, the one about my patterns, my needs, is the book then punishing me for learning it?
Not punishing, no.
Yeah.
I think it's contextualizing. It's not about blame. It's highlighting the cost of being attached to the outcome.
Okay.
The lesson isn't how to secure the person. The lesson is the realization that the attachment itself was ultimately destructive. It's arguing that Finding Noir isn't a roadmap for how to get it right next time.
So it's more about...
It's about accepting the cost.
Yeah.
What happens when you finally stop editing yourself for an outcome that was never available?
So the goal shifts completely. You move the focus from external behavior and strategy to just accepting the internal experience.
Yes.
If resolution isn't the goal, then what kind of connection are we even talking about here? It sounds like connections destined to fail in the physical world.
That is exactly it. The book traces connections that live vividly in the interior world and fail spectacularly in the physical one.
They have profound emotional depth in your mind.
But almost no continuity or fulfillment in reality.
And that internal truth you mentioned, the one the body knows, that seems to lead us right into this territory of modern labels, like twin flames.
It does. And this is where the contemporary relevance just really shines. The book immediately deals with concepts that, they dominate modern dating conversations.
Things like twin flames, somatic memory,
karmic connections, projection, all of it.
Okay, let's define these really quickly for context because they are everywhere right now. A twin flame it's described as the other half of your soul, right? This immediate, intense recognition.
Correct. And somatic memory, that's the idea that the body, your physical body, holds on to the trauma or that intense recognition, even if your mind has tried to move on.
And karmic connections.
Those suggest a relationship designed purely to, settle some old energetic debt or pattern.
But the real power of the book, I think, is that it refuses to get bogged down in that vocabulary.
It absolutely does. It intentionally refuses to tell you whether the connection was real, spiritual, imagined, karmic, or psychological. And why is that?
The reason is so insightful. The author notes that the body doesn't care what we name the wound. Whether you call it a twin flame or psychological projection, the ache, the destabilization, that lived experience is the truth. The label doesn't change the impact.
We spend so much energy trying to categorize the pain that we miss the lesson the pain is trying to teach us.
Exactly. And this brings us to the definition of noir itself. In the book, noir is not a specific person.
It's more of a concept.
It's a catalyst, a placeholder for a certain kind of connection.
A placeholder for a connection that arrives without invitation and just leaves without explanation. These aren't relationships built for comfort.
Not at all. They're encounters that intensify quickly, not because they're meant to endure, but because they are meant to reveal. Their purpose is to destabilize your internal world.
So not resolution, but interruption. To interrupt the architecture of who you thought you were.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the book just fundamentally shifts the focus from the external outcome to the internal experience. We're looking at this connection as a vehicle for self-discovery.
That's the core teaching. It's the idea of love as a mirror. The connection shows you not who the other person is, but who you become in their presence.
Okay.
It exposes what they activate, what unresolved pattern they trigger, and what you mistake for destiny when it is, in fact, revelation.
So you think you've met your soulmate, but really you've just met a profound and often really uncomfortable truth about your own history, your own needs.
Your own patterns that need healing. That is the crux of it.
Yeah.
The book meticulously breaks down the specific dangers in these intense, fast-moving modern connections.
Especially in a world where we're all sort of starved for deep, immediate recognition.
Well, yeah. Because the feeling is so visceral, it's incredibly easy to misidentify the source and the purpose of that intensity.
Can you walk us through those specific risks? I think Finding Noir outlines 4, and they're pretty critical to understanding this, how we confuse activation with intimacy.
Okay, let's start with the first 2. They both deal with misinterpreting the intensity. 1, intensity can masquerade as alignment.
That instant chemistry.
That instant, undeniable chemistry, that feeling of knowing them immediately. We assume that high emotional activation means we fit together perfectly.
And we rush through the critical stages of connection because of it. We skip the vetting process because it just feels fated.
Exactly. Which leads to number 2. Recognition can feel indistinguishable from belonging.
Meaning?
You recognize a pattern, maybe a familiar dynamic from your past, a childhood echo, or a reflection of your own hidden self, and you instantly equate that recognition with finding your home, with belonging.
That's terrifying, because recognizing an old pattern is not the same as finding safety. It might just be finding familiarity.
Absolutely. And 3, this is where the biology kicks in. The nervous system confuses activation with intimacy. Because we're so starved for connection in modern life, that high alert state, the anxiety, the profound physical reaction, the anticipation, we misread that elevated, even anxious feeling as a profound connection.
So when we talk about activation here, are we really just talking about being slightly panicked, but we're dressing it up as passion?
In a way, yes. That feeling of always waiting for the next text, always on high alert. Your body's reading that high state of arousal, good or bad stress, as a sign of significance. When you are highly activated, you are paying extreme attention, and the mind equates extreme attention with extreme intimacy.
But true intimacy actually requires safety and calm.
Which these connections rarely provide, and that naturally leads to the 4th trap.
Projection.
Filling in the blanks. Projection fills in the gaps that reality doesn't. Because these connections often fail spectacularly in a physical, sustained world, we use our imagination to complete the story.
We project the ideal partner, the perfect resolution, the destiny we want onto this placeholder.
Often with traits the other person never even possessed or intended to embody.
And the book doesn't romanticize this confusion. It uses it as a basis for demanding, a really rigorous self-inquiry. It forces you to sit inside that discomfort.
It does. It pushes back on the easy answers. It encourages you to ask, what are we really responding to when someone feels familiar?
Or what parts of ourselves are we trying to reclaim through another person?
And most critically, at what point does longing become a refusal to see clearly?
That last question, that really challenges the whole romantic narrative. It suggests that maybe the deep longing we feel isn't fate, but avoidance.
Avoidance of what?
A refusal to deal with the gaps in our own lives. We'd prefer to focus on an unreachable external person instead.
Yes. It traces how unhealed hunger can dress itself up as fate, or how longing can borrow spiritual language like twin flame to justify staying in a painful loop.
But ultimately, the book brings us back to the purpose of the pain itself.
It does. The final conclusion is that some encounters are not meant to last. Their purpose is not companionship, but consciousness.
They arrive to interrupt, to destabilize the entire architecture of who you think you are, so that something truer has a chance to emerge.
They are necessary interruptions that force a self-reckoning. They break the framework so you can finally see yourself clearly, independent of that other person.
So the connection succeeds not when you get resolution with them,
but when you achieve revelation about yourself.
So what does this all mean for you, for the listener who might be struggling with a connection that just left them hanging? The book's ultimate offering isn't closure.
No, not that neat tying up of loose ends. It's recognition. Recognition for anyone who has been there, for anyone who loves someone who never fully arrived or felt chosen in private and abandoned in reality. It validates the feeling without validating the need for a neat ending.
Instead of the typical self-help approach that says, you did something wrong, here's how to fix it, this book seems to offer a gentler but maybe more demanding premise.
Which is?
What if you didn't do anything wrong? What if you were simply brave enough to feel everything?
And that's the final takeaway. Finding Noir is for those who are less interested in happy endings than in honest ones. It invites a more rigorous, compassionate form of inquiry into our own motivations.
That is a deep thought to end on. If the mission of this book is to sit with us in the discomfort and not rush toward some narrative closure, we kind of need to apply that same patience to our own lives, don't we?
We do. And if the most powerful connections are often the most revealing, even if they aren't the healthiest, maybe consider this. What important revelation about yourself are you currently avoiding by trying to force a swift, tidy ending to your own unresolved stories? What profound truth are you missing by demanding closure, instead of simply accepting the consciousness this experience came to deliver?